With the NBA Finals underway, everyone is focused on the matchup of the century, Nikola Jokic versus Jimmy Butler. And some we're still talking about LeBron. I don't really get that one. But we haven't talked enough about the Celtics and their failures to return to the NBA Finals, with the main catalyst being Jason Tatum. And even though they used the ankle injury as an excuse, I don't, because they had 7 chances to win this series and they didn't take advantage. But after the loss, I asked myself, is Jason Tatum a certified playoff choker? And the answer may or may not surprise you. Now, to figure out if Jason Tatum is a playoff choker, we need to look at the numbers, specifically the playoff numbers. And Jason Tatum has been in the playoffs every year since he's been in the league in 2018. So, here are the numbers. So in Jason Tatum's first playoff series ever, he would go up against the Milwaukee Bucks. He would average around 15 points per game, have 3 assists per game, and have 5 rebounds. They would eventually go to 7 games and win this series. Jason Tatum would have a low of 4 points and also have a high of 22 points in this series. The next series, they would go on to face the Philadelphia 76ers, in which they would finish off in a gentleman's sweep. Jason Tatum would finish off with 23 points per game with 3 assists and 3 rebounds. Then Jason Tatum will go on to face the Cleveland Cavaliers, and in an epic Game 7, and an epic series overall, Jason Tatum would only average 17 points per game with 2 assists per game and 4.1 rebounds per game. They would eventually lose the series, but it was a sign of things to come. In 2019, they would go on to face the Pacers, in which they would sweep them straight up. Jason Tatum would average 19.3 points per game with 1.5 assists and 5.5 rebounds. Now, they would go on to face the Bucks in the next round. They would take the first game of the series, but then they would drop the next 4 and lose as a form of a gentleman's sweep. He would only average 12 points per game, have 2.2 assists, and 7.6 rebounds. Now, this was also the Kyrie Irving era, and this was the last year he would be with the Celtics. But Jason Tatum now had the reins of the Celtics. So what could he do now? Well, in the bubble, Jason Tatum would go on to face the Sixers first, and he would average 27 points per game, and he would also have 2.5 assists with 9.8 rebounds. Then they would go on to face the Toronto Raptors, in which they would go to 7 games, and he would average 24 points per game. He would also have 5 assists and average 10.3 rebounds. They would then go on to face the Miami Heat, and they were 1 series away from meeting LeBron James in the NBA Finals. He would average 26 points per game this series, have 6.3 assists, and 9.8 rebounds. But it wasn't enough, as the Miami Heat would defeat the Boston Celtics in this series. But with Jason Tatum having such a good postseason, this was obviously a sign of things to come. Especially since Jason Tatum was such a special player, they could definitely make a finals run next year, right? Well, in 2021, Jason Tatum would have to face the Washington Wizards in the play-in, and he would go off for a 50-piece against the Washington Wizards, winning the game and going on to face the Brooklyn Nets. They would be gentlemen swept, but not before Jason Tatum put on the performance of a lifetime, putting up a 50-piece in Game 3 and putting up a 40-piece in Game 4. They would eventually lose, and Tatum would average 30 points in this series with 4.6 assists and 5.8 rebounds. So, obviously, getting outplayed in this series by KD, Kyrie, and Harden, it's not the biggest deal in the world. Next year was their year, right? In 2022, the Celtics would have a revenge tour, first sweeping the Brooklyn Nets, in which in Game 1, Jason Tatum would have a buzzer beater. In the second series, they go to 7 games with the Milwaukee Bucks and defeat them, and then they would go and defeat Miami in another Game 7, and Jason Tatum was performing pretty well. He had put on some great performances, and it looked like he was that guy. Then, in the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors, Game 1, Jason Tatum put up 12 points. 12 points. Alright, well, not a superstar thing, but they still came away with the win. They would lose game 2, in which he would put up 28 points, win game 3, put up 26 points, and lose the next 3 games in this series, and in the last game when they needed him the most, he put up 13 points. Not the best for the guy who's supposed to be the guy. He's also having a 65.6 free throw percentage. That's not very good either. But, you know, it was his first time in the finals. Give him a pass. I'm sure next year he'll do perfectly fine. I mean, I guarantee it. Well, the next year would be this year's postseason. And in the first round, they would go on to face the Atlanta Hawks, in which they would beat them in 6 games. He'd average 27 points per game, have 5.3 assists, and 10 rebounds. Then, in the next series, they go on to face the Philadelphia 76ers, in which this was kind of a weird series for Jason Tatum. He ended up averaging 29 points, but he scored 7 points in Game 2, 19 in Game 6, but ended off the series in Game 7 with a 51 piece, the record for the most amount of points in a Game 7. That was set literally a week ago by Steph Curry against the Kings in the first round at that time. And so, in the Eastern Conference Finals, they go down 3-0. Straight up, no way around it. They went down 3-0. Jason Tatum had put up 30, then 34, then put 14 on the board. But in the next 3 wins, they come back. Jason Tatum put up 33, 21, and 31. Now, I mean, there's nothing stopping them, right? I mean, this is it. They're going to win, right?
And the last team to make it into the Eastern Conference playoffs, they lost only after they had won 3 straight games to start this series. So it was a Game 7. They stand eye to eye with history, and they did not blink. The Heat are going to the NBA Finals.
Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. In what world do the Boston Celtics lose this game? I mean, they were down 3-0. The impossible. The absolute impossible. And they came back with all the momentum in the world. It was all on their side. They even had home court advantage in the loudest arena in the NBA. And yet still managed to not only lose, but get blown out at home by the 8-seeded Miami Heat. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, round of applause for the Boston Celtics, because how do you lose that? Really? And is this all Jason Tatum's fault? Well, partially. Well, you say, oh, he twisted his ankle. Still, a superstar is a guy who can push through anything. It's all about mentality. But sometimes numbers don't tell the whole story. We need to talk about the what if. The biggest what if that may be the biggest downfall of this Celtics team. Okay, so you remember when the Nets were imploding and both of their superstars and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving requested a trade? Well, during that time, trade rumors swirled around Jaylen Brown being traded for Kevin Durant, and people were against it. But now it looks like a mistake. Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum would have for sure run Jimmy Butler home. But now, when you look at the other side of the coin, Kevin Durant was on these Suns that had Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton, and they lost in the same fashion as last year, but 1 game earlier. And you can't put all the blame on Jason Tatum. It is a team game, but this is what Gilbert Arenas, former NBA All-Star, had to say about the Celtics. And a lot of people thought he was wrong in this, but he may not be.
For all the Boston fans out there, this is how horrible your team really is. You take your 2 stars, put them aside because they're stars. The other 3 starters, Marcus Smart, as a starting point guard, he ranks 27 out of 30. White, as a point guard, 29, 30. That is the 2 guards that you are starting with. Now, let's add Horford. as a starting power forward. Kevin Love plays 5 to 7 minutes. So obviously he's gonna rank last. Horford is right in front of him. So 3 players on your team is in the back of starters. If you took those 3 and put them on the bench, them 3 are still not better than Heat's bench. That's how horrible that starting 5 is. We're not talking about Tatum and Brown. They are legit players, right? In their position. You have to calculate the rest of the team.
Now, a lot of people, and rightfully so, thought that what Arenas said was stupid. But part of it wasn't completely off. When you take a look at the rankings, he actually has a point. Marcus Smart was ranked 18th behind CJ McCollum for point guards. 18th. Now that's not high, but it's also not low. That's more middle of the pack. And Grant Williams, their starting power forward, was ranked 19th behind Nicholas Batum, which I don't think Nicholas Batum is better than him, but these are the professionals. And then Al Horford was ranked 10th behind DeAndre Ayton. And when I say that Gilbert Arenas isn't completely off, he isn't. There is a point to what he's saying, but also he is also underrating this Celtics team. I mean, really, no one would deny that the Celtics have more than likely the most depth in the NBA. With guys like Derek White, Robert Williams III, Malcolm Brogdon, they even brought in Danilo Gallinari, but he didn't even play because of a knee injury. I mean, the depth that they have is absolutely insane. But to my original question, is Jason Tatum a playoff choker? Is Jason Tatum a playoff choker? Well, it's yes and no. Jason Tatum put up the most points in a Game 7, but he also shot 2 for 18 from 3-point in the last 3 games of the Miami Heat series, shooting 11% from 3. So, what does the question come down to? Strictly mentality. There are a group of players that are the players who can turn on a switch and score no matter who is in their way. Guys like Jimmy Butler, Kobe, MJ, Bron, KD, those guys are in the upper echelon of mentality. But then, there are the players who shrink when they are needed the most in the playoffs. Guys like James Harden, Chris Paul, Joel Embiid, and Stephen Curry. I want to believe in Tatum, and I want to believe Tatum is not a playoff choker. But when you don't perform on the biggest stage, and you can't be considered a playoff superstar, there is a problem. And so if Jason Tatum cannot win next year and puts up a poor performance, I believe Jason Tatum will start to be considered a playoff choker. And unfortunately, it would be the sad truth. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And as always, peace.